Hi and welcome to today's edition of Talking Around the Library Tree from Lancaster University Library. My name is Andy and I'm joined today by my colleague Bob Frost, who is the Faculty Librarian for FST. So welcome Bob, thank you for joining us.
Morning Andy.
It's great to have you on the show today. So this is kind of an informal chat. We're going to talk about some of the things library related and a little bit more personal stuff if you don't mind indulging me in answering those. So we'll start off with general question. Tell us about your role and what you do to help students.
So I am the Teaching and Learning Faculty Librarian for the Faculty of Science and Technology, and helping students is my main aim. And the way that I try and do that is to help them maximise their use of all of the wonderful resources we've got in the library. So what we've got, how to access it, when it can be useful, how to use it, and basically help them to use the library to really maximise, there's that word again, the time at university and make the most of what we have. And I try and give them those skills so that when it comes time to dissertation, they've got the skills they need to conduct that independent research, really. But along the way, it could be anything. Whatever students come to me and ask about, I usually try and help. And if I can't help, I usually know someone that can.
Yeah. And that's through embedded teaching, one-to-ones, both in person, online.
Yeah, in FST, we pretty much, myself and Louise, I work quite closely with Louise Innes, the learning developer, and we are pretty much embedded in all of the programs across FST now. So whether it's teaching, whether it's workshops, one-to-ones, drop-ins, pop-up libraries, whatever it is, we're just trying to get the word out really and spread the knowledge that we have. Not subject knowledge, I would like to add. So please no complex astrophysics questions. I can find you the information, but understanding it is over to you folks as students and researchers.
Right, okay, so I'm now going to go off and submit a lot of anonymous astrophysics questions created by ChatGPT and send them into the faculty librarian's email. So moving on from that, changing tack slightly, I've asked this of all the librarians that we've interviewed for this Faculty Librarians Unmasked series. What's your favourite book and why has it left an impression? And a caveat to that, you're allowed more than one book because I know it's a dangerous question for a librarian.
It is a dangerous question. And, right, I'm going to go current to begin. I read a lot of Brandon Sanderson and he's recently released 3 standalone Cosmere books, and don't worry if you don't get this, it's probably for a very niche audience, although I've just discovered he's one of the world's leading authors, so there might be a few Brandon Sanderson fans out there. But The Sunlit Man, which is a standalone Cosmere book, and I can't really say too much about it, but it was the pace and the way it was written, I was completely gripped more than I have been with any book I've read in the last 10 to 20 years.
Wow.
It was frantic. It sort of left you feeling a little bit anxious, which is not really what you want from reading a lot of the time. But the pace of the book and then the big reveal at the end was pretty mind-blowing. But then I like all sorts of books. I mean, I'm a big John Steinbeck fan, so To a God Unknown is one of his lesser-known books, but I went through a phase of collecting, I kind of collect quite a lot of things, but collecting Steinbeck books, and that one particularly touched upon me. It was just really calming. It's sort of the opposite end of the spectrum to The Sunlit Man. But then, there's Jaws, Peter Benchley. Me and yourself are massive Jaws fans, so it could go on forever. If you wanted to get dystopian, there's The Scarlet Plague by Jack London, one of the first dystopian books, I think, novels, in Brave New World, 1984. But I could go on forever. But I think, to answer your original question without rambling too much, I'm going to go current because we spend a lot of our time looking backwards, I think, and it's nice to focus on current new stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with The Sunlit Man by Brandon Sanderson.
And Sanderson's a fantasy author, is that correct?
Yeah, it's high fantasy. It's not a light undertaking, but if you wanted to get into it, I would advise starting with the Mistborn trilogy, and then if you're hooked, get ready for a long, turbulent ride.
Yeah, it's plenty of reading. How many pages is a new book you were telling me before?
Well, the new book that I picked up the other day, I think it's 1,350 or 1,400 pages. And it's hardback, so I'm not patient enough to wait for the paperback.
Right. Yeah, good luck lifting that up to read it. So, fascinating. Thanks for sharing that with me. So, thinking back to your time at Lancaster, how long have you been here now?
3.5 years.
3.5 years. It just feels longer, in a good way. In a good way. What's been your best moment in your role at Lancaster so far? And I'm sure there's quite a few because you've done so much.
I was trying to think. On a personal note, welcoming the first group of refugee and asylum seekers from the local community, working with Global Link, having them on campus for the day was great. Just sitting around chatting about football and food and providing them with a welcoming space and just promoting the community offer. It was amazing. And from then on, it's sort of gone on and it's grown. And actually, quite a proud moment is being asked to present on the work we've done to the M25 consortium of fancy London libraries, university libraries. So going to present to them because somebody from their group of universities saw me speak and wanted me to speak to those within the M25.
That's
and
fantastic.
Also, on another personal note, being able to visit Leipzig with yourself, Andy, to the Leipzig campus last winter, which was a great honour, really, to be allowed to go over there and work with the staff and students and basically, again, help them maximise their use of our wonderful library.
Yeah, I agree. That was one of the highlights of my time at Lancaster was going to see how a partner institution works and to see the different pressures that they've got and their enthusiasm from their students and staff. And it's just a lovely city. It was a great trip and very rewarding professionally.
Probably another personal non-work note, the best lager I think I've ever tasted in Augustina. I'm going to be shameless and give it a plug. The Augustina beer keller in the centre of Leipzig.
Yeah,
I dream about that beer.
Yeah, so if you're listening to this or watching this in Germany and you're an exec from Augustina, the Munich brewery, Bob would like a sponsorship deal, please. Thank you. Moving away from lager to a slightly more serious subject, and again, I've asked all the librarians this because it's alongside what's your favourite book as a librarian. What's your favourite database and why?
Yeah,
and this is another can of worms to open, I guess.
It is a can of worms to open, and Elsevier, one of the big publishers out there, have lots of ways and means of acting we don't really agree with, but some of their products are good. And SCOPUS, I bang on about this when I'm speaking to students in lectures. I tell them librarians, we're allowed such things as favourite databases. We are that dull. And SCOPUS, I think, is mine because of the multidisciplinary nature of it, the tools and the ways of tracking citations and getting research intelligence. I get quite excited when I go into SCOPUS. I actually did it with my wife the other night. She was asking about well-being and whether universities are actually working with students on research into well-being and green therapy. And I was like, let's get it. Let's do a SCOPUS search. She said, it's 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night. Why are you doing work?
Who says romance is dead?
Well, you know. Last of the great romantics. But yeah, I would say SCOPUS for academic purposes, but then also Bob is something that I don't think a lot of people are aware that we have.
So what does Bob stand for?
Oh yeah,
it's not because you're Bob as well.
Yeah, it's now to do with me. It's Box of Broadcasts, and it's basically the biggest streaming site of TV that I'm aware of, and we get access to it as Lancaster staff and students, and it's basically everything broadcast on free-to-air television for the past 25 years. So if you support who I do in the football world, you can just go back and watch Match of the Day from 13 years ago and beyond and forget about the last 13 years. And hopefully from that you may guess who I support. I don't want to put it in the podcast because it will bring up all sorts of contentious questions and malice towards me.
Yeah, and that's just from me. Oh, cool. So, I mean, yeah, I can definitely say that he does bang on about Scopus. He does in the office. He goes on about it all the time. I'm like, Bobby, I know what Scopus is. You don't have to sell it to me. So thank you for that. So, time travel's been invented. Okay, yeah. You've got your own DeLorean. If you don't get that reference, Google DeLorean time travel. What piece of advice would you give yourself if you could travel back in time to when you were a student that you've now learned as a librarian?
Well, actually, quite an interesting story on this, I guess. It would be listen to your librarian, not just because I'm one and I'm a egomaniac and want you all to listen to me, but the reason I became a librarian in the first place was previous to this, I used to work wastewater treatment and construction, and then I decided to do a degree in my later years, late 20s. And when it came to dissertation time, I was pretty much ready to jack in the whole thing. I was like, I'm not cut out for this, because that's when your library skills are really put to the test. So if you can build those skills up from the word go, it's nowhere near as much of a shot when you're left to your own devices to start doing your own research. So listen to your librarian, make an appointment with your librarian if you're thinking, I can't get my head around finding journal articles, because in some subject areas, you don't have to do it until your dissertation. So try and learn those skills earlier. And going back to my experience when I was doing my dissertation on the punk rock poetry of Percy Shelley, Rise Like Lions from Slumber. That was my title. And I never thought as a wastewater treatment worker I'd be doing a dissertation on the Romantic era and Percy Shelley. But point of the story is I was ready for jacking in the degree, and someone said, go and speak to your librarian. So I made an appointment with my subject librarian, faculty librarian, whatever it was called at the time, and he was called Ian Sheridan. And I sat with him for 40 minutes or so in a one-to-one, and came out of that meeting thinking, I can do my dissertation. I can use the library. And at that point, I decided that's what I want to do. And eventually, I became that role, really. So thank you, Ian Sheridan. You will always be remembered for me as the reason why I moved from wastewater treatment to becoming a faculty librarian.
Brilliant. So you got that light bulb moment that we refer to as librarians, where you're helping a student and all of a sudden you see it in their eyes that they now get it.
And that's the best job, immediate job satisfaction.
It is, yeah.
And it's that's what it is, and I do what I do. I want to help people. Listen to your librarian. And try and do it before you get to your dissertation, then you're not less likely to have a meltdown when it comes to doing your own independent research. And the tools we've got here and the programs we've got are there to equip them with that.
Yeah, that's cool. So, final question of this podcast, and I'm sure there's lots we could add to this and say about this. Tell us an unusual or interesting fact about yourself.
Well, there's lots of interesting facts, but they're very niche, probably aimed towards the skateboard community. So I won't go down that route because we're here talking about libraries, but you yourself, Andy, were a part of an interesting fact.
All right, okay. This is worrying.
Yes, well, as two librarians visiting Leipzig, we stumbled, and bear in mind, it was probably about -8, -10, about a foot of snow on the ground. So me and Andy, and I've been told this quite a lot throughout my career as a librarian, you don't look like a librarian. I don't know whether you've had similar comments, Andy, but we were in our big coats because it was freezing outside, both in sort of Hoth-style parkas, and we stumbled upon the National Library of Germany.
We did, yes.
So as two librarians, well, one librarian and an ex-librarian, Andy, is that right?
Well, yeah, I'm always a librarian, but yeah, technically I'm a digital skills developer.
Yeah. We thought, we've got to go in. We've got to go and visit, investigate. So we just wandered into the National Library of Germany, and as librarians, we thought, we'll just start wandering around. We'll have a wander down this corridor, and mine and Andy's German isn't too good, and I don't think the security guards' English was that good. But the short story is, we were both escorted out of the National Library of Germany for looking unscrupulous and wearing coats that were too big. And I just don't think we tried to explain in English that we were both librarians and we did belong in this building and we weren't here to rob the place. But yeah, being escorted out of the National Library of Germany is quite an interesting fact, I guess.
Yeah, I think I remember it, the security guard called another guard over, so there was two of them to come and talk to us in the end because we were trying to explain, and I think he thought we were being a bit off with him, which we weren't. We were quite amused by it, and he said, "It's your coach. You could steal books," and we both kind of looked at him, and he went, "You have to leave now." And and they actually walked us out the door and closed the door behind us.
Yeah, so there you go. Two librarians visiting the National Library of Germany.
We obviously look very dodgy, Bob.
Yeah, well, it was cold. We both had big coats on.
Yeah. So, that's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that and reminding me of how dodgy we both look in our winter attire. So this has been great. Thank you for coming along to the show today and talking. And if you are an FST student, then please, if you need help with anything before your dissertation, get in touch with Bob, and he would be delighted to advise you and help you with that. So,
being a librarian is wonderful because, especially when you've got so many subject areas, because you get little snippets and gems of information on these fascinating research topics the students are undertaking.
Yeah.
So it's really quite invaluable for the pub quiz team as well.
Yeah, there's never a dull day, is there?
No.
So anyway, thank you for joining me, and thank you guys out there for listening and watching. And please check out the other podcasts that we have from Talking Around the Library Tree, and take care. Goodbye.
Cheers. See ya.